Okay, my name is Dr. Jacqueline Postel. I'm a psychologist, a staff psychologist at High Desert State Prison in Susanville, California.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school at the University of Laverne. It's a clinical community program, and the community emphasis is working with underserved populations. So a lot of cultural competency courses we had to take to work with underprivileged populations.
And what exactly do you do where you work?
I do individual therapy, group therapy, and some assessment. I work on 4 different cell blocks. You have A, B, C, and D. B yard is your protective custody yard, and C, D, and A are your A yard is a level 3 yard, and C and D are level 4 yards. Everything is based on race in the prison, so when I get these guys in my group, I have to be sure that they are going to leave their biases, racism, and all that at the door, because I can't allow that to come into the group. Whatever prejudices that they have that they need to do in terms of surviving in prison, they need to leave that at the door. And if I see it in my group, they'll be dismissed from the group. And a lot of these guys, because they don't get group and individual therapy like they're supposed to, they're willing to do that. Because some of these guys, believe it or not, want a different way of living. They want the tools that they were never given as children to live life in a healthy way. You know, they were often taught to get their needs met in a very unhealthy way. And so in order for them to get their needs met in a healthy way, they need someone to tell them something different, because the people that they've surrounded themselves around in their life have taught them certain ways to get their needs met, and it hasn't worked for them. I tell them, I said, your best thinking has gotten you in prison. So you really need to sit down, shut up, and listen to a different way of life. And some of them are open to it and some of them aren't. And it's easy for me to weed them out once I get them in groups. So I may get a group of guys, like when I initially started the group, I would have, oh God, maybe 30 or 40 guys, but I knew I would interview each one of them individually, and then based on how they presented themselves, I would either deem them either appropriate for group or not. Like, for example, I would get a guy, and I know he had very poor impulse control, meaning that he could not, he wouldn't be appropriate for group because he would speak out of turn all the time. He would talk all the time. So those type of people I wouldn't allow in group. Some people just weren't appropriate for group. And then once they get into group, if I had someone that I knew, like for instance, I had a guy, and I knew the group something wasn't right, and it was because he was racist, and he was bringing his racist values into the group, I would kick him out. So the group would dwindle down almost always to at least a core 7 guys. And those guys would be the people that I know wanted to learn a different way of life. And I was lucky enough I had education to help me, and it was a program called Breaking Barriers that was developed by an ex-con named Gordon Graham, and he actually helps the inmates kind of figure out why they got to where they were, because they weren't always that way. So the program is designed to take them back to when they were a little kid, and the dreams and aspirations that they had as a little kid, and try to keep them on track with that, and then try to take them through where they kind of went left field and how they ended up doing a life of crime. And so doing the groups, I mean, it was, wow, it was fantastic. You know, I had guys that helped me co-facilitate the groups too, and so they would help me know how to get down to the level of the inmates to bring them in. It was a very humbling experience, but it was very educational for me too. You know, that as a person having a doctoral degree, be open to listening to inmates show me how to do group and do it effectively. So, you know, you have to be open to learn from other people, and even the COs, the corrections officers, who only have a high school diploma. You know, they know a lot more about prison life than I do because they're around these inmates more. So you have to rely upon not only your own understanding and knowledge, but your street smarts, and rely on the inmates and the COs to do your job effectively. Individual therapy, you always have an escort with you. Always, always, always have a CO with you. And even though they're outside the room, they're just there for your safety. And you have to be very, very careful because these inmates are smart. You have to put up very strong boundaries. You can't ever let your guard down. You can't ever talk about anything personal. Everybody's called by their last name because they don't want anybody to know your first name. So they don't want anything on a personal level. So it's a different type of job than any job in the community. And then the assessment part is you would test guys, like say for instance if you thought somebody was mentally retarded, there are certain tests that you can give them so they can get the services that they need, because the prison where we were at, they don't provide those types of services. Or if you thought someone was severely mentally ill, it's a level of care called EOP, that's a higher level of care, so you can get the information that you need to make them a different level of care to send them out of the prison. So those are probably the main things that I do. But like I said, you have to have the respect and a good relationship with the inmates and the corrections officers in order to do your job effectively. It's a must.
Is there anything that you wish you knew beforehand that you know now before you took your job?
No, not really. You know, I think probably I'm glad that I had street smarts, and I think that really helped me to navigate myself through the prison system better than most people. I think probably the one thing that I wish I had known about possibly before going to prison was just the preferential treatment that is shown towards white males in the prison system. So I'm kind of looked down upon by some of my peers, and especially my supervisors who are white males, because I'm a different breed of a psychologist. I'm a black woman, which is a rarity in the prison system, and I'm good. I'm a damn good psychologist. And I'm very outspoken. I speak my mind, and I'm honest, you know, and so I'm a type of person that's kind of above reproach. So I'm kind of threatening in a way. So I know 6 months after I got to High Desert State Prison, one of my supervisors would often send me emails. He was so funny because I used to tell him, you know, this is how I get you, Dr. Murray. You keep sending me emails. And, you know, and he would say, oh, Dr. Postel, why are you sitting at your desk? Why aren't you out in the field? And I would go in his office and I said, you know, Mr. So-and-so, who's a white male, is sitting in his office. Did he get the same email, Dr. Murray? And he'd say, yeah. And so I'd go ask the guy, and he said, no, Dr. Murray hasn't sent me anything. So I had to file a complaint against him. And so, but through that, filing that complaint, I had all these emails that he had sent me. So I had corroboration of what he did, and so he never bothered me again. So I think probably that would have probably been the one thing that I wish I had known coming in, because I think maybe I would have handled things maybe a little bit different. I'm glad it turned out the way that it did, that I happened to have a supervisor that kept sending me emails, so I had a lot of information to kind of prove what he was doing to me. But it took me a while to accumulate all that, so I had to go through a lot to get him. So I think I wish I had known that. I was lucky enough when I first got there, there was another black psychologist, Dr. Markowitz, and female, and then another African-American male, Dr. Hull, that was there. And so I was able to get I had some support. And so that was very helpful. So that probably would be the one thing that I wish I had known coming in, that I did not know.
What would you say are attributes of a psychologist that will make them a good psychologist?
That makes a good psychologist?
Yes.
Wow. I would think, at least for me, you have to have a compassion for it. You have to want to be able to help people. And the type of people that you help in this field are people that have gone through years and years and years of trying to do other things to get relief from their emotional pain. So by the time that they come to a psychologist, they're pretty beat up, and they probably have done a lot of things that they're not proud of. So one of the main things that you have to be as a psychologist is someone that can look beyond people's faults and see their needs, most definitely. So you have to be able to come from a place of non-judgment, because these people are broken and they need help. And they need help from someone that isn't going to judge them, that isn't going to make them feel guilty and shameful, because that's what they're coming in through the doors with a lot of. So it does take a special type of person to be a psychologist, because you have to hear a lot of horrible things in your life, and you have to be able to deal with that in a way to be able to put that aside and tell that person, or not even to tell that person, but just to be present with them in their pain. Because the one thing that I think you have to be able to do as a psychologist is to provide a safe environment for that person to be able to be whatever they need to be to get over whatever it is that they need to get over. Because I think all people have embedded in them the answers, but they just need a safe environment to be able to talk through whatever it is that they need to get through in their life. So I think you have to have a very strong compassion. This has to be the thing that you think you're called to do in order to be a good psychologist. And not all psychologists are good psychologists, I think.
How did you decide to work with a perp over a victim?
To work with...
How did you choose this line of psychology instead of another?
Like working with prisoners?
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, my very first clinical experience was working with victims, and it was really difficult to work with victims. I worked with a place called Project Sister, where I worked with victims of rape and molestation, and you know, with people like that are in a lot of pain, and especially what they've gone through, which is really pretty graphic. You have to be able to be present with them in their pain, and that's very, very difficult to do, and it takes a special type of person, and I don't think that was me, but I knew that I wanted to help in some way, help victims, and throughout doing my clinical hours, I happened to do my clinical hours at a youth authority in Ventura, and I realized that that would be one way that I could help victims, is working with perpetrators. If I can get perpetrators to get their needs met in a healthy way, then there would be no more victims. And so that's what made me want to do what I wanted to do in terms of working with victims. But it was, you know, people think, oh, you want to work with victims, you got a bleeding heart. No, not work with perps. I want to work with perps because I want no more victims. And so that's my purpose of wanting to work with perpetrators, is because I want no more victims. So working at a Ventura Youth Correctional Facility, it was pretty awesome. And it's a little bit different than working at a prison in terms of being able to do your job. It's a little bit easier working at a youth authority, because they really think that these people can be saved, and so they're really open to allowing you to deliver your services to them, as opposed to at an adult prison. I think that's the difference.
How did you know this is something that you wanted to do?
Wow. Well, I knew I wanted to work with people of color, and most of your people of color are behind bars, and I knew that there was a shortage of people of color in the prison system, and so I knew I was needed there. I had a taste of it at the youth authority, and so I knew it was something that I could do. I'm not a cuddly type of therapist. I'm kind of a in-your-face, tell it like it is type of therapist, and so this population kind of fits my style of therapy. You know, these people kind of like honesty. They kind of like straightforwardness, and so it was just a good fit for me. So just the type of therapist that I am is a good fit for this population, because I'm not a how does that make you feel type of therapist. I'm pretty honest, pretty straightforward. I don't hold back much, and they appreciate that, believe it or not.